So a few months ago, I started this league experiment. I figured it would be fun to get into it with some friends and try to learn a difficult game like this. And really, in the end, the experiment ended up having very little to do with league and just a lot to do with myself and wanting to prove something to myself that I was able to persevere and learn something difficult, a new skill set, if you will. And this is interesting because I have over 5,000 hours of Dota 2, and then I stopped playing for many years. So going into League of Legends, I actually had a bit of a disrespect to the game because the Dota 2 community is it's quite niche and the game is older, it has a lot of legacy things, lots of like weird complexities. And so we used to think, or at least me as part of that community, we used to think that we're better than League players, right? And that we're above them in some sense. And that League is a newer, it's a simpler, streamlined version of the same game. And so going into it, in some ways, I had some toxic expectations of, you know what, I've played Dota for many hours, even though I've been on a break for many, many years, I can still jump into this and be able to pilot very well, more than the average player in these starting ranks. And it was a very interesting humility exercise to realize that League has its own depth in a different way and is its own challenging and interesting game. And even though I didn't go into it respecting the game earned my respect. Before I talk to you about the journey, I want to frame this discussion because I did have a goal when I started off, and I wanted to hit silver rank. So for those of you who don't play League of Legends, the ranks go from low to high: iron, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, right? It keeps going up. But for my purposes, you basically start at the bottom of the pit, right? And I wanted to get to silver rank in my first year, in my first season of playing this game. And I wasn't sure if I was gonna make it. Again, earlier on, I fully expected to do it very easily, but quite soon I figured out that it was gonna be a big challenge. And so I start to get into this. This is kind of the honeymoon period where I'm just playing with friends and we're just shooting the shit, right? We're just having some fun. But the reality is, it's not feeling that great for me because my mental is so overwhelmed with all this new stuff that I'm seeing, right? Imagine I go into this game, it's 5v5, and more than likely, I have no idea what the enemy champions do, what threats they have, right? What are they trying to do in a way? What is their plan? I have no idea of any of that. So trying to react in real time when you have no idea what to expect is almost impossible. Add to that the complexity of just trying to pilot your champion, which you're new to. It was completely overwhelming. I had no idea what I was doing, what was going on. Now we go to the next period, and this is when season 12 started. So once again, just to recap for those of you who don't play the game, what happens is that every year, or they call it a season, the rank basically does like a soft reset, right? So it kind of goes back to the middle, somewhere in the middle. But that initial process when the season resets is really chaotic. And what happens is you have a lot of higher skilled players that have been reset back down and are now sort of in the pit with you, right? And for them, it's easy to get out of there. It's almost like they're smurfing in a way. So they're just having these easy games, and I'm sure it's fun for them. But I can tell you from my perspective as a new player, those games are a nightmare because you're pitted up against people that have way more experience at the game than you. They're way more skilled at the game. You just have no chance. I compare this, if you've ever played Street Fighter or another fighting game with a friend that's really good at it, and you're like me, someone who has no idea, it's just you're not even playing the game. You're just not playing the game, right? Even if they're trying to let you win and stuff, it's not fun. It doesn't feel like you ever have agency. You're either getting carried by your team or you're getting stomped by the other team. It just feels terrible, right? So I had to get through this little rut, which is the period where the higher rank people were kind of resetting their ranks. But even still in this phase where I'm doing a lot of research, right? So I'm watching videos, I'm looking up strats, all of this knowledge is going into my head and I'm learning a lot, but I'm still on average much less informed or much less experienced than everybody that I find on the field in the game. Because the reality is most people that I run into have played prior seasons. They have played more years. And that really adds up. There's an amount of just knowledge that you take for granted that a new player like myself has to accrue the hard way. There are no shortcuts, right? You just have to put in the games. If we skip forward a little bit, we get into the arc of the journey where I actually find my identity in the game. I discovered that what I enjoy, after trying a few roles and different things, what I actually enjoy is playing top lane and being this sort of bruiser character, right? And at this point, I've tried many different bruisers, and I've really narrowed it down to 2 or 3 that I really like. But at this point, I chose to go all in on Garen, right? Garen, one of the most basic champions, if you will. And for several reasons, I decided to just completely focus on Garen. And the main one was that looking back on my Dota 2 time, one of the big reasons that I never got to like a top percentile skill level in that game, I believe, is that I never really looked at learning objectives in a critical way, and I never focused on a single role or hero or character, champion. And that's something that I really wanted to change this time. I was gonna focus on one type of champion and ideally one champion, and I was gonna try to get fucking good at that, right? I was gonna try to master that champion and that playstyle, and that's what I started doing here. So I got into Garen, and I started to understand what the champion can do, right? There's this initial phase where you try to limit test, learn what you can do with it, what types of strategies work. Do you split push? Do you group up? How much of each do you do? All of this sort of stuff. This is just a lot of trial and error and experimentation. But it was actually a beautiful part of the journey where I was learning a lot, and I was definitely seeing progress. Focusing on the one champion helped so much, because over time, as I started to get my ability in check, the ability to use the champion well, I started to relax a little bit and be able to focus on other elements of the game. And this leads me to the second reason why I decided to focus on just one champion and focus on Garen specifically, is because I wanted a champion that's simple enough that I can get through the mechanics quickly, right? And I can start thinking about the game itself. I can start learning League of Legends as opposed to learning the champion, the super specifics, minutia, and getting lost in all those details of combos and stuff like that. Instead, pretty soon I started to be able to free up some of that mental stack that was overwhelmed initially, and I was being able to recognize, okay, what is happening here? What is the situation in this team fight, right? What can I do? And really committing to that one champion, that one style, and finding my place in the game. It got to a point where I had a very clear picture of what it is that I should be doing at most times, and I had a very clear identity of where I fit in different compositions and what it is that I should be doing. What is my, my mission, my main goal at different times during the game. This is where we're just getting the reps in. We have an established strategy, we have an established identity, and now we need to get the reps in. Okay, so this is the phase where I'm learning how to snowball in lane more, how to win lane more consistently, just perfecting the trade patterns, the little things like that, just building a database of knowledge. So many little things that when I look back now, you know, it's really cool to see that I've built this sort of network of ideas and things for different champions and how they also play together and stuff. So it's been really rewarding to kind of look back at all the progress. And it's been a fun process to learn, but it's just so frustrating at first. You know, it can be so overwhelming. And again, I just can't stress enough from the perspective of a new player how much knowledge is assumed by older players, right? Even talking with some of my good friends that were helping me get into the game, a lot of times they would explain stuff and they would skip things or they wouldn't mention some things that were actually crucial. But it's probably because they were so integrated into their playing that they didn't even think about some of those basic things. But the other thing that I learned in this stage is that no amount of watching or talking stuff over will actually translate into getting better. And what needs to happen is that you need to put it into practice. So this is why in this stage, I took, one or two main learning objectives at a time and really tried to put that into practice. So I would, maybe I would watch a tutorial video on something, and then I would immediately try to apply it on the game. This leads into the most beautiful part of my journey, which is where I was just refining my process. And all of this stuff that we've talked about, I was doing on a pretty, I'm not gonna call it irregular because I was playing almost every day, but I didn't have a system necessarily. And at this stage where I'm refining my process, I really set up how it is that I'm going to progress. And I set up the 3-block system that I learned from Broken by Concept, an awesome podcast where they talk about solo queue improvement and all this stuff. So playing 3 games in a block. So you're gonna sit down, you're not just gonna play one game here and there like I was doing. Instead, you're gonna set time aside to play 2 or 3 games, ideally 3 games. You sit down, you play those games, and then I review the games. And that was awesome to start doing as well. It's a little bit silly to think about, watching your own games in a way, but it just allows you to see how it is that you're actually executing. Because in the heat of the moment, in a fight and all this stuff, you have no idea what's going on. You have some idea, but only watching in hindsight, you can see, oh, I didn't do that correctly. And then after watching many reviews or doing many reviews, you can start seeing patterns like, oh, I'm actually wasting the duration of my queue in some, whatever it is. You can start to find little things among a good sample of games. And the big thing that I got from that reviewing process is win-con assessment. And win-con stands for win condition. So it's when I'm in a game, having the ability to think, okay, what is my win condition? And sometimes it will be someone in your team, right? Maybe my carry. If I'm able to protect my carry, we're gonna win, right? Because it's just a very strong champion, whatever it may be. Or it could be that we need to get certain objectives. We need Herald, Dragon, whatever it is. And so finding those things and preemptively preparing to be there, that's a huge deal because everything in the game revolves around expecting what's going to happen and then preparing accordingly. And the more you expect stuff and the more you understand the importance of things, the better you can prepare and you can be there ahead of time. But that takes me to the final stage of my experiment, which is, when I actually got silver. We finally got it. We got through promotions. We went through the painful experience of failing promotions, and then, you get up there again and you get another chance. And then we got it, right? We got our year goal of getting to silver. And just to have so many takeaways from this journey, in deep takeaways in terms of like humility, just accepting where you're at, embracing the suck, right? Like we talked about, just that tenacity and perseverance of sticking with something difficult that you're not good at naturally, so you have to put in the work. You just have to outwork people in a way, right? And just owning your outcomes, like I said, most of your games are gonna be in your control. Or at least you have way more control than you may think in them. And just understanding that, just so empowering as well. Where even losses don't feel bad, because if I feel like I had a big impact in that game and we still lost it, that's okay. You know, I still played to my champion's identity and to my ability. It still feels great and satisfying. That's the thing with this game. Sometimes it may not be fun. Maybe it's sucking because, you know, you're losing, but it's satisfying. And it usually is. The times where it's not is when maybe my focus isn't there. But the big thing as well that I've taken from this is the ability to just put an incredible amount of focus during the whole game. And this is something I definitely didn't do prior, whether it's Dota 2 or League initially. Just the ability to, you know, there's no podcast in the background, there's nothing, right? Maybe some instrumental music, but you're just focused on the game for however long it takes, and you're just devoting all of your mental ability capacity to what's going on in the game. And it's such a big difference, guys. It's such a big difference. It also helped me in other areas because focus is like a muscle, right? The more you practice it, the better you get at it. And it's almost like a meditative activity to jump into a game and be fully focused in that game. So if you stuck through all of this rant, I want to thank you. I did want to do like a little retrospective of this experiment, this journey that doesn't end here. Now it just continues. Next up is gold, right? We're gonna work this and next year towards gold, and however long it takes us, we'll get there. But I wanted to encapsulate this kind of first year of the League experiment and show you that for me it was much more about than just playing a game. It was about challenging myself and earn that respect for myself, really, for sticking with something that's hard but also rewarding. And I think all of us can appreciate that. And whether it's League or some other activity, it does pay off to stick with something difficult and learn a skill set and all of this good stuff. It bleeds into other areas of your life. And I highly recommend, if you haven't already, embark on a similar journey to learn something that's difficult and interesting as well. And with that, I just want to remind you that we do stream 3 times a week. So if you do want to see me play League and other games, we're there on Twitch. Link for that down below. And thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time.